Moving into a new house should be a fresh start, a new beginning. But sometimes the walls hold more than just memories. Sometimes they hold secrets, dark, terrifying secrets. Tonight, I bring you 3 true tales of horror where innocent families stepped into their dream homes, only to discover they were stepping into a nightmare. Let's begin. When my wife and I first stepped into our new home, it felt like a dream come true. A beautiful Victorian house nestled in a quiet neighborhood. The price had been surprisingly low, but we chalked it up to luck. We were wrong. The first night was uneventful, but by the second, things felt off. I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to a creaking sound. At first, I thought it was just the house settling. But then, I noticed something strange. Our bedroom door was slightly ajar, even though I had closed it before bed. Over the next few nights, things escalated. Footsteps echoed down the hall when we were both in bed. The feeling of being watched became unbearable. My wife, Emily, started waking up with scratches on her arms, as if someone or something had been marking her. One night, I decided to stay awake with a bat in hand. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I heard the door creak open. Shadowy figures stood at the end of the hallway. My breath hitched as it took a step closer. The closer it came, the more my body froze in terror. It was like my limbs refused to move. Then, the figure whispered something, a raspy, guttural sound that sent ice through my veins. "Get out." I lunged at it with the bat, but the moment I blinked, it was gone. The next morning, I started researching the house's history. What I found made my stomach drop, for previous owners had mysteriously vanished. No bodies, no explanations, just gone. Desperate, I set up cameras. That night, Emily and I huddled together, staring at the screen. At exactly 3:12 a.m., our bedroom door creaked open. But this time, something was different. The figure wasn't just watching. It was crawling towards the bed. I grabbed Emily and ran. We left everything behind. To this day, the house remains unsold, a dark stain on the neighborhood. And every now and then, I dream about that whisper, "Get out." And in my dream, I never do. What I didn't tell Emily was what I had found beneath the floorboards of our bedroom the day before we left. As I was packing up the last of our things, I noticed a loose board near the closet. I pried it open, my hands trembling, and beneath it was a stack of old photographs. Each one depicted a different family that had lived in the house, but they all had one thing in common: the same shadowy figure standing in the background, barely visible, watching. One of the photos made me stop breathing. It was a picture of us, taken from inside the house. Emily was cooking in the kitchen, and I was sitting on the couch, completely unaware. I threw the pictures into a box and burned them in the backyard. I didn't tell Emily. She was already terrified, and I knew this would push her over the edge. We moved in with my brother temporarily, hoping that distance would ease the paranoia, but the dreams never stopped. Every night, I saw that figure. Sometimes, it was standing at the foot of my bed. Other times, I could hear it whispering just outside the door. One night, as I lay awake, heart pounding, I decided to check the online listing for the house. Maybe someone had finally bought it. Maybe it was over. The listing was still active, but there was something new. A recent photo, likely taken by the realtor. At first glance, it was just an empty shot of the master bedroom. But as I zoomed in, my blood ran cold. The closet door was slightly open, and in the darkness, 2 glowing eyes stared back at me. I slammed my laptop shut and tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew the truth. We hadn't escaped, because the next night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the sound of our bedroom door creaking open. And this time, we weren't in that house anymore. To this day, I still don't know what it was that lived in that house. A spirit, a demon, something worse. All I know is that it followed. U.S. We moved again, changed our numbers, did everything we could to put distance between us and whatever was haunting us. But sometimes, the dead of night, I swear, I still hear that whisper, "Get out." And each time, I wonder, what happens if I don't? Even after moving into our new apartment, things didn't feel normal. It was a high rise in the city, far from that cursed Victorian house, but something still felt off. Emily started waking up at 3:12 a.m. every night, drenched in sweat, mumbling about shadows in the room. I began noticing things moving on their own. Small objects, keys, glasses, even the TV remote appearing in places I knew I hadn't left them. At first, I blamed stress. But then, one night, I woke up to Emily gasping for breath. She was clutching her throat, eyes wide with terror. "Something," she choked out. "It's here." I jumped out of bed and turned on every light in the apartment. There was nothing. No shadows, no figures, nothing to explain the suffocating dread we both felt. But then I saw it. The closet door was ajar, just like in the listing photo. That was the moment I knew it had followed us. Desperation led me to contact a paranormal investigator. He agreed to visit that same night as he set up his equipment. A deep chill settled over the room. "It's strong," he muttered, running a hand over the old camera he had brought. "And it's attached to you." A loud bang echoed from the hallway. We turned in unison. The door to our bedroom had slammed shut. The investigator held up his recorder and asked, "Who are you?" Silence. And then, "Let me in." It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a growl, layered with something inhuman. The investigator's face turned pale. "You need to leave now." We didn't hesitate. That was the last night we spent in that apartment. We packed in a hurry and fled to a hotel, never looking back, even now. As I write this from a completely different state, I can't shake the fear that it's still watching, still waiting, because every night at exactly 3:12 a.m., I wake up gasping for air, my body frozen in terror. And just beyond the darkness, I swear I hear it whispering, "Get out." But this time, I know the truth. There's nowhere left to run. I'll never forget the day we first saw the house. It was one of those misty Vermont mornings where the fog clung to the trees like ghosts, refusing to let go. The sun barely managed to cut through the thick silver gray veil, casting long shadows that seemed to move when you weren't looking. Mark had been so proud of himself for finding it a sprawling Victorian with gabled roofs, wrap-around porch, and a price so low it made me uneasy. "It just needs some love," he'd said, squeezing my hand as we stood in the overgrown front yard. I wanted to believe him, but something about the place made my stomach tighten. Maybe it was the way the towering house seemed to lean forward, as if listening, or how the air felt thicker the closer we got to the porch. Emily, only 8 at the time, had been twirling in circles, her blonde hair a golden blur as she laughed. Her giggles echoed strangely off the empty house, warping in a way that made my skin prickle. Even then, I should have noticed how the sound didn't fade naturally, how it felt. Swallowed. The realtor, a gaunt woman with a tight smile, gave us a rushed tour. She avoided the staircase as much as possible, and when we finally stopped in front of it, her fingers tapped nervously against her clipboard. "Original hardwood," she said too quickly, rapping her knuckles against the banister like she was testing its stability. Or, I realized later, like she was checking if something would wrap back. We moved in on a Friday. By Sunday, Emily refused to go near the stairs. That first night, I found her standing at the base of the staircase, her small frame illuminated by the dim glow of her nightlight. Her little fingers clutched the hem of her pajama shirt, eyes wide and unblinking. "He's looking at me," she whispered. A chill ran down my spine. I followed her gaze to the dark alcove beneath the stairs. Just a hollow space, paneled in. The same aged oak as the rest of the house. Empty, silent. "Who is baby?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light as I ran a hand through her hair. Her voice dropped so low, I almost didn't catch it. "The man with the shiny teeth." I froze. Mark dismissed it as an overactive imagination, a tone. At exactly 3:17 a.m., a sound. pulled me from sleep. 3 deliberate knocks from downstairs. Not the erratic creaks of an old house. Not the wind. Knock, knock. Like someone testing to see if we'd answer. Mark went down with a baseball bat. Found nothing. But when he came back, his face was pale. His fingers gripping the handle so tightly his knuckles were white. "Lisa," he said, voice hoarse. The basement door was open. We'd locked it before bed. I'd checked. The next morning, I found Emily crouched at the base of the stairs, her cheek pressed against the wood paneling. "He's humming," she said. I knelt beside her, pressing. My ear to the wood end froze. A faint, off-key lullaby seeped through the panel, muffled as if through thick glass. My stomach twisted when I yanked Emily away. My palm came away damp from the wood. Not condensation, something thicker. Saliva. That was when the scratching started. It wasn't mice. Mice scurry. Mice squeak. This was deliberate. A slow, rhythmic scrape of nails against wood. Scritch, scritch, scratch. Pause. Scritch, scritch, scratch. Always from the same spot. The center panel under the stairs. One night, delirious with exhaustion, I pressed my ear to the wood. The scratching stopped. 4, 5 seconds, there was only silence. Then a wet, ragged inhale from the other side. I screamed so hard my throat bled. The contractor we called the next day refused to tear out the paneling at first. Structurally unsafe, he muttered, but his eyes kept darting to the stairs, as if expecting something to emerge. When Mark offered double his rate, the man relented, but insisted on leaving his tools in the driveway, just in case. He mumbled. The first crack of the crowbar split the wood like a gunshot. The smell hit us immediately, rotting meat and damp earth, undercut by something sickly sweet. Formaldehyde? The panel gave way, revealing a hidden space no inspector had ever mentioned. A room, a coffin-sized cavity. The cot was the first thing I saw. Rusted springs, a stained mattress oozing, yellowed stuffing, empty soup cans stacked neatly in one corner, their labels peeled off, a plastic bucket crusted with things I didn't let myself identify, and the walls. Names, dozens of them, carved deep into the wood. Sarah, Michael, Grace, Thomas. Some were so old they had blurred with time. Others looked freshly cut at the center. Gouged with what might have been a hunting knife was a single sentence. "I waited for you." The police found a newspaper clipping wedged behind a floorboard. September 1973. A local boy, the previous owner's younger brother, had vanished walking home from school. Hey, his backpack was found at the edge of our property. The case went cold, but the food cans, that's what haunts me. The detective held up one of them, a can of Campbell's soup. It's a kind with a label design from the 90s. "This wasn't here 30 years ago," he said quietly. Something had been down there. Something had been fed. We left that night. Didn't pack, didn't look back. But as we peeled out of the driveway, Emily suddenly went rigid in her car seat. "He's waving goodbye," she whispered. I turned in the upstairs window, backlit by the moon. A skeletal figure stood perfectly still, one hand pressed against the glass, and it was smiling. I should have known something was wrong when the previous tenant left the mirror. The condo was perfect in every other way, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Seattle skyline, pristine hardwood floors, and that sleek, modern aesthetic I had been searching for. But when I did the final walkthrough, I noticed it. A full-length mirror bolted to the wall in the master bathroom. "It's custom installed," the realtor said too quickly when I asked about it. "Fits the space perfectly. You'll love it." I didn't love it from the first night. The mirror felt off, not in the way it looked. Tint was just a normal mirror with a thin black frame, but in the way it behaved. I would catch my reflection blinking when I didn't. Sometimes my reflection moved a fraction of a second slower than I did, like a buffering video. The first time I noticed something truly wrong was 3 weeks after moving in. I was shaving when I saw it. My reflection's mouth twitched into a smile, while my own face remained still. I froze. razor hovering near my throat. My reflection kept smiling. Then it winked. I stumbled backward, knocking over my toiletry bag. When I looked again, my reflection was normal. Just me, pale-faced and wide-eyed. That night, I covered the mirror with a bedsheet. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of fabric sliding to the floor. The mirror was uncovered. My reflection stood there, arms at its sides. Only it wasn't mirroring me, was sitting up in bed. We stared at each other. Then it raised one finger to its lips. I threw a pillow at it. The glass cracked. The reflection laughed soundlessly as spiderweb fractures spread across its face. The next morning, called a handyman to remove it. He took one look at the mirror and refused to touch it. "That thing's been glued and screwed," he muttered, running his fingers along the edges. "You'd need to tear out the whole wall to get rid of it." That was when I started researching the building's history. The condo had only 3 previous owners. The first 2 sold quickly. The third, Todd, was a woman named Elise. She'd lived here for 15 years. The police report said she'd been found in a bathroom, dead from an apparent suicide. The details were vague, but one line stood out. The deceased was positioned facing the mirror at the time of discovery. I started sleeping on the couch, but the dreams came anyway. And I'd be brushing my teeth when the reflection would step out of the mirror. It would stand behind me, resting its chin on my shoulder as we both stared into the glass. "Almost perfect," it would whisper in Elise's voice. "Just need to fix the eyes." A week later, I woke up in the bathroom at 3 a.m. My hands were covered in blood. The mirror was shattered. Shards of glass protruded from my palms like grotesque. On the largest remaining fragment, written in my own handwriting, "She's almost finished." I was moving out the next day. I had packed most of my things, leaving only essentials for the last night. But as I gathered my bags, a wave of exhaustion hit me, heavy and unnatural. I told myself I would just lie down for a few minutes before the drive. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in front of the mirror. The room was dark, but the mirror reflected light from an unknown source. My reflection was staring back at me, smiling. No, not smiling, grinning. I tried to step back, but my feet wouldn't move. The air felt thick, pressing against me like unseen hands. My reflection tilted its head, watching me struggle. "You don't need to go," it whispered. Its lips didn't move, but I heard the words, "You belong here." I shook my head violently. "This isn't real." The reflection sighed. "You keep fighting." So did Elise, "But you're already so close." Look, against my will, my gaze lowered. There was something in my hands, a shard of glass. Blood dripped from my fingertips. My breath came in ragged gasps as I realized I had been here before, had done this before. The last thing Elise saw was her reflection smiling at her as she bled out. I tried to drop the glass, but my fingers refused to obey. My reflection leaned forward. Its eyes weren't mine anymore. They were hers. Elise's hollow, empty, waiting, almost perfect. It whispered again, "Just need to fix the eyes." My own arm moved, lifting the glass toward my face. No, I wrenched myself backward with every ounce of strength I had left, crashing into the counter. The spell broke. The mirror let go of me. I staggered out of the bathroom, gripping the doorframe like it was my last tether to reality. The reflection was still there, still grinning. I grabbed my bags and ran. Didn't stop to lock the door. Didn't stop to breathe. I just ran. The condo has a new tenant now. Someone else lives there, walking its halls, brushing their teeth in front of that mirror. I wonder if they've noticed anything yet. They've heard the whispers. A week after I left, I got a package. No return address. It's just my name, printed neatly on the label. Inside was a single shard of glass, wrapped in tissue paper, and on it, written in perfect, familiar handwriting, "You forgot something."